What's up guys, welcome back to Classic Octane. I am Taylor. Today we are actually working on the new CB500 bike again, just because I am still waiting on one or two more parts for the Barn to Brat project, but we'll be right back onto that project, I would say next week, so don't you worry about that. It's coming along nicely. For this, basically last time I got it running, why I go air quotes, I'll talk about here in just a second. So I got the bike running in the last video, but it wasn't running very well at all. And some of you even were able to catch it in the video as well. But it was actually missing on the number 2 and number 3 cylinders, the two in the middle there. Those are on the same coil, but what I did is I went ahead and took the easy route and checked the spark plugs. And I actually found that the number 2 and number 3 spark plugs weren't firing. So I moved them to coil number 1, no spark at all. I tried coil number 1 with the regular number 1 spark plug that was already in there. It worked fine. Moved that spark plug to number 2, and it worked fine. So what that tells us is it's not the coil, it's actually the plugs themselves. So what I went ahead and do is I actually just ordered 4 brand new ones. They're cheap enough to not bother. Even though the other 2 were working, we're going to swap in all 4 new ones, and then we got a new carburetor return spring, so we can actually have our throttles kind of snap back. After we get into that, we're going to work on the exhaust a little bit. There's only one kind of partial muffler left on there, so we're going to chop that guy off. And then ideally, by the end of this video, hopefully we'll be able to get the bike to easily turn on and sit and idle and run, pretty well. So we'll see. Got the new plugs on. Didn't bother showing it because you guys know how to put spark plugs in things. So now I'm going to put on my new spring. Basically it just connects from this little nub right here on the top linkage down to, it's going to be hard to see, but there's a little pull, actual removable thing that kind of goes in between the number 2 and number 3 carb. So super easy, just get the bottom hook around that. Bring this up, connect this around there, and then we should have, this is a really stiff spring, so I'm going to have to use some pliers for sure, but once it's on there, it won't come off, and then it'll give us a nice return on our throttle. So now that I got the carb back on, or carbs back on, if they're still a little bit on the sticky side, I think it's more of the throttle mechanism and the cables themselves that are a little sticky, but once we dive farther into this bike, we'll either replace the cables or just lube them up really well. I'm sure they have all the same kind of dust and fine crap that's kind of stuck in all the other crevices of the bike. So now what I'm going to do is, this crappy old muffler's got to go, so I'm going to sawzall this thing right about right here. There we go. That ought to breathe a little bit better. Got my fuel on. No leaks or anything, so that's good. Going to throw a battery charger in here. Definitely left the key on the other day on this thing and killed the battery when I was out of town. Should give us enough juice. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to do the usual, turn it over until the oil light goes off, and then we'll try to fire it up. So ignition is off. Oil light's out. Turn the ignition on. I'm going to give it some choke. Let's see what happens. Definitely running a lot better. Still sounds like there's a pretty good amount of valve train noise. So I'll have to look into that. I'm going to pull this motor eventually anyway. I have no idea if you guys can hear me, but I'm going to go a little bit further away while I'm letting it run. What I was saying is I'm still hearing a little bit more valve train noise than I would ideally. So whenever I pull the motor out of this thing, I'll probably pull the valve cover off, maybe even pull the head off, and just make sure it's nice and clean on the inside and nothing crazy going on. I don't expect anything to be all that bad. I have pulled the tappet covers off. You know what? I'm going to adjust the valves. So cut it off. I'm going to go ahead and adjust the valves, and we'll see if it quiets that valve noise up a little bit. I already have a video on my channel. I'll throw a card right here on how to actually adjust these, but they're super easy. Basically, you're just turning over the engine until you start with number 1 and number 4. You really don't have to, but I like to. So that's number 1 and number 4. There's a little mark in there. You put it at the top dead center, and then either 1 or 4 will be on the compression stroke, meaning both of the valves are up and sealed so that the rockers are loose. So right now, number 4 is on the compression stroke, and I'm basically just going to look for 2,000ths on the intake, 3,000ths on the exhaust of clearance in between the rocker and the valve. And then I can undo the lock nut, screw it up or down if the measurement's not what we want, but that's basically all we're looking for. Got you guys set up back here, got all our rockers adjusted, valves adjusted, whatever you want to call it. So that should hopefully, fingers crossed, turn or quiet down some of our valve train noise. I also hooked up the tack cable, so we'll see if our tack works. Ideally, I'd like to set the idle right around 1,000 RPMs or so. Let the bike sit there and warm up, and when we get a nice solid idle, then I can shut it off, and we will grab the carb syncing tool, and we'll go ahead and sync the carbs too, just to go another step further in trying to get it to run properly. Turn that on, turn this on, ignition on. I'm gonna go no choke. Much better. So I am still getting some noise, but it's not the clanking it was before. It's more of a sewing machine noise like these normally make. So. Alright, now that the bike is pretty well warmed up, I'm going to hook up my carb syncing tool, and then we will actually go through the syncing process. I don't know if you can hear me very well or not, but got the carb sync tool all hooked up. Overall they're pretty close. Number 4 is a little bit off. Let's see if we can adjust it a little bit. Go. Sweet. So having just one off isn't too bad. You can see they're all within a couple now. Getting everything buttoned up. I figure we'll give you guys one more fire up here. Turn the key on. Hit the button. going to call this video. I'm really excited about the progress we made on the bike between the carb sync, the new spark plugs, and the valve adjustments. It's running really well, about as well as we could expect, considering it's cut off exhaust and totally open carbs, and it's not at all tuned for that. So I'm really pumped. We still, obviously, there'll be a ton of work to do on the bike. We're still determining which direction we want to go. I'll have some more information on that. It's probably going to do it for this bike for a little while. Next week, we're going to jump right back on the Barn to Brat project. Only maybe 1 or 2 more videos before that bike's totally done. Ton of stuff to do on the Camaro. I got an EFI, I got a bunch of other stuff to put on that. And then, of course, we have that new bike that nobody on the channel's seen yet. So I'm going to start teasing that on Instagram. So if you're not following me, make sure to go and do that. It's the same thing as my YouTube channel. It's just Classic Octane. I'm going to start posting up some pictures of like parts and pieces of the bike and see if you guys can guess what it is. So make sure to go and do that. Subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure to like this video, and I'll see you guys soon.